Solon warned Athens that no man should be called wealthy until he has seen the end of his life. That was not poetry, it was accounting. The Greeks understood something modern men refuse to face. Wealth cannot be measured while life is still in motion. Income rises and falls, fortunes flicker, cities burn, but structure endures. This is why the Greeks did not teach wealth as flow, they taught it as arrangement, and arrangement decides who remains standing when movement stops. Income was always considered noise, income was visible. Anything visible invites interference, taxes, confiscation, war, jealousy, law. The Greeks knew that what could be seen could be touched, what could be touched could be taken. So they never confused income with security. Income was treated as foam on water, useful while present, meaningless once gone. A man who required income to feel stable was considered exposed. Ask yourself quietly, if all inflow paused tomorrow, how much of your life would collapse? That answer tells the truth, income never will. Why flow was never trusted. Flow requires continuity. Ships must arrive. Markets must remain open. Labor must be demanded. Authority must permit exchange. Too many conditions. The Greeks lived through famine, siege, plague, and political reversal. They learned early that flow is fragile, so they built wealth around what remains when flow fails. This is the first fracture between ancient and modern belief. Modern men chase speed. Ancient men pursued placement. Speed dies quickly. Placement survives violence. Wealth as immobility. Greek elites prized immobility, not laziness, immovability. Now the ability to remain unaffected while others scramble. A man who depends on income must move constantly. A man with position can wait. Waiting is not passive. Waiting is dominance, because waiting forces others to act first. And the first to act reveals weakness. The Greeks did not reward the fastest. They rewarded the last man forced to move. Ask yourself, who moves first in your life, you or the pressure placed upon you? The poor were taught motion. The poor were taught, work more, trade faster, hustle longer. Motion created the illusion of progress, but motion without direction exhausts. The Greeks watched generations of men move endlessly and remain exactly where they started. So they drew a conclusion too dangerous to announce publicly. Motion does not create wealth, position does. That sentence destabilizes entire systems, so it stayed private. Why arete was economic before it was moral? Arete is not virtue signaling, it is functional excellence. A man with arete wastes nothing, not time, not energy, not attention. Such a man requires fewer inputs, and a man who requires little is difficult to control. This is why arete was not taught universally, because consumption is governance. If a population needs more, it can be directed. If it needs less, it becomes selective. Ask yourself honestly, how many systems rely on your appetite to function? Dependence was the real poverty. In Athens, poverty was not defined by coin, it was defined by dependency. A man who needed wages daily was fragile. A man who needed permission to exist was exposed. The Greeks understood that wealth meant reduced dependence on external approval, not isolation, independence of necessity. This is why land mattered more than trade. Land does not beg. Land does not hurry. Land does not negotiate. It produces quietly. Land was structure, not asset. Land anchored families. Gold moved, land remained. Gold tempted thieves. Land demanded stewardship. Income trained men to react. Land trained families to plan. This is why Greek elites accumulated land quietly while praising labor publicly. The praise was the misdirection. The invisible balance sheet. Greek wealth was stored in places that did not announce themselves. Legal position, social insulation, family alliances, time autonomy, reputation, durability, none of these produced applause. All of them survived crisis. As a man with income but no insulation collapses under pressure. A man with insulation but little income waits, and waiting is undefeated. Why income became the metric later? Because income is easy to explain. Structure requires thought. Thought breeds resistance. Teaching income keeps people busy. Teaching structure makes people cautious. Cautious men do not rush into traps, so income became the story told publicly. The Greeks told a different one privately. A question that should not be comfortable. If income were true wealth, the most exhausted men would be the safest. They never are, so answer this without defense. Does your income give you control, or does it merely postpone vulnerability? The silence of the elite Greek elites rarely spoke about wealth. They spoke about law, order, proportion, balance. Wealth was implied, not discussed, because discussing wealth invites attention, and attention invites erosion. The Parthenon was not loud, it was inevitable. The false promise of more. More income promises relief, but relief is temporary. Every increase attracts new obligations, new dependencies, new exposure. The Greeks observed that more often creates new fragility, not freedom. So they pursued fewer dependencies, not higher inflows. This is the pivot modern men never make. Why this knowledge was never democratized? Because a man who understands structure stops chasing. He stops overworking, stops over-consuming, stops volunteering his life force for temporary rewards. Such men are difficult to govern through incentives. So the lesson stayed gated. The unfinished pressure. The Greeks did not deny income. They denied its supremacy. They knew wealth was not what enters your hands, but what cannot be taken from your position. That understanding changes behavior permanently, which is why it was never shouted. Long pause in narration. Before this continues, you must confront the question that fractures belief. If Greek wealth was never about income, what have you been sacrificing your life to optimize? The Spartans were poor in coin, Plutarch wrote, yet rich in command. That was not irony. It was design. The Greeks understood that wealth is not what you possess, but what you are no longer forced to do. Income forces motion, position permits refusal, and refusal is the oldest form of power. Why dependency was the true chain. The Greeks did not fear poverty. They feared dependence. A dependent man must please, must perform, must agree. Agreement is submission, dressed politely. So the Greeks measured a man's standing not by what he earned, but by how many decisions he could decline without consequence. Ask yourself, how many no answers could you afford this month? That number is closer to your true wealth than any figure. Income creates obedience, not security. Income requires continuity. You must remain acceptable. You must remain productive. You must remain aligned with expectations. This produces obedience long before chains are needed. The Greeks saw this clearly in mercenary armies. Soldiers paid wages, fought fiercely, but only while payment flowed. The moment payment stopped, loyalty evaporated. So elites never tied permanence to income. They tied it to ownership of position. Position was always legal before it was economic. Greek elites secured wealth through law first: citizenship, land rights, inheritance rules, marriage alliances. Income came later, if at all. Because a man protected by law does not need to hurry. A man without protection must stay visible, useful, and agreeable. Visibility is vulnerability. The Greeks minimized it. Why the elite avoided visibility? Visibility attracts, envy taxation, suspicion regulation. The Greeks noticed that the loudest wealth rarely lasted longest. So elite wealth was designed to be quiet, distributed, slow. The Parthenon was visible. The power behind it was not. Ask yourself, how much of your effort exists to be seen rather than secured? The poor were paid. The elite were placed. Payment is temporary. Placement endures. The poor were paid for tasks. The elite were placed into roles that survived individuals. A paid man must renegotiate daily. A placed family renegotiates once per generation. This is why Greek wealth passed through bloodlines, not paychecks. Time was the real currency. The Greeks understood time as a weapon. A man with income sells time. A man with position controls it. Time controlled slowly reshapes outcomes. This is why Greek elites planned across lifetimes. They did not ask, "What will this earn me?" They asked, "What does this make inevitable?" That question terrifies systems built on urgency. Why urgency was taught to the masses. Urgency collapses vision. A man rushing cannot reflect, cannot withdraw, cannot redesign. And the Greeks ensured the poor lived urgently. Daily wages, immediate needs, constant scarcity. Scarcity keeps men obedient. Patience was reserved, patience as a class privilege. Patience is not a personality trait, it is an economic condition. A man who can wait controls negotiation. A man who cannot must accept terms. The Greeks trained patience privately and condemned it publicly. Publicly, patience was mocked as laziness. Privately, it was rehearsed as timing. The difference created dynasties. Ask yourself, who sets the timetable of your life, you or necessity? Why consumption replaced control? The Greeks noticed that men who consumed heavily were easier to manage. Needs create leverage, so elite culture minimized visible consumption. Simple dress restrained appetite, measured display, not out of virtue, but insulation. A man who wants less cannot be bribed easily. Arete as economic armor. Arete reduced dependence. A man disciplined in appetite needs less income, accepts fewer compromises, endures instability. Such a man frightens systems built on incentives. So arete was framed as philosophy, not strategy. But it was strategy. Why modern men confuse wealth and comfort. Comfort feels like security. It is not. Comfort increases dependency. The Greeks avoided comfort excess because it raised maintenance costs. High maintenance invites control. Low maintenance preserves autonomy. Ask yourself, how expensive are you to keep satisfied? The silent transfer of wealth. Greek wealth moved invisibly, through marriages, through favors, through obligations remembered. Income moves loudly, structure moves quietly, quiet movement survives upheaval. That is why the Greeks distrusted spectacle. Why this knowledge remains unpopular, because it demands sacrifice before reward. It asks men to reduce dependency before increasing gain. Most prefer the opposite. So the belief that income equals wealth persists. It keeps people running. The final distinction, income answers, how much do you earn? Wealth answers, how little can the world demand of you? The Greeks built toward the second question. The first was for noise. The mountain remains. The Greeks never promised fairness. They promised reality. Wealth was never about income. It was about position that outlasts fluctuation, structure that resists force, character that reduces need, and that path was never crowded. Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly. Epictetus. The road upward is quiet, and it is still there.